Welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. I'm so glad that you guys are here to join me today. I've been working hard on Dante and studying for GPen along with work and everything else, and there's so much going on, but I kind of put it on the back burner today because I wanted to talk about the new box that's retiring compromised. I did not really put my full effort into it until the last day. I've been working on it slowly, and I finally just pushed through it. And I wanted to show you a couple really cool tricks that I found, as well as just what made this box so hard and maybe some ways that you can look at the boxes in the future a little bit differently. For this one, very minimal on tools. You'll need a browser. I did one little bit of GoBuster. I did learn about a tool called Webwrap that I'm going to share with you, but I am going to also show you how to do it without any additional tools. Just GoBuster, browser, until you get towards the end, and then at the very last step, we'll use Ghidra and CyberChef. But lots of it, like I say here, is living off the land. You have to learn to deal with what you've got, and you'll be limited on access because there's an IP table rule set that is not going to allow traffic in and out except for inbound 80, inbound 22. So it's a real pain. It's something that you're gonna have to deal with. So we're gonna talk about a few things. The first one is the CVE for LiteCart. This is gonna be a website that's running its own little e-commerce. There is an authenticated upload issue, which is going to allow us to put files onto the system. It's the only way we're going to be able to put files onto the system at this point in time. So it's important to understand this, and I'm going to take that POC and tweak it a couple different ways to get it to do exactly what I'm looking for. As we go along, you're not going to be able to do a lot with PHP because they've disabled some of the functionality. You got to learn how to bypass that, so we'll use that in conjunction with that CVE for LiteCart, and then start going through different files. And there's going to be a lot of issues just in terms of password reuse and passwords that we're going to find inside of logs. So it's going to be kind of brutal. I would normally call this box CTFE, but looking at some of the ratings, I understand where people find it more enumeration and realistic. CTFE to me is usually something that's just really hard enumeration, can't find things. This one, you can find it if you use the right methodology. So we'll go through that, and then towards the end, we're going to use just a little spot of Ghidra. I'll show that off for anybody that hasn't used it. I am not an expert at reverse engineering. It's one of my weak areas that I got to work on, but I'm going to show you super basic how to open up Ghidra, find the information that we're looking for, and then pull a password out of a compiled exploit. And then throughout the whole thing, there's going to be lots of enumeration, like I said. This video is probably going to take a while, so let's get started. All right, I've been cramming this box all day, so it feels really weird, but we're going to go back the same way we do every time. Get your skills right and start with an Nmap. So Nmap, and we'll start without any scripts or anything right now until we can find ports. So the box we're looking at is 10, 10, 10, 207. So we'll let that run. It's going to be pretty minimal. Like I said, there's a lot of ports blocked, not a lot going on. So all you're going to find is this, port 22, port 80. So there's going to be some SSH and some HTTP. Let's go check out the website. So 10, 10, 10, 207. And what you're going to see is a website for the legitimate rubber ducks. Don't fall for it. There's no legitimate rubber ducks on here. I don't care what they say. There's a lot of enumeration that can be done just in terms of looking at things, but you're not going to find a whole lot just through looking at robots and looking at the source code. So I'll show you a GoBuster real quick. So GoBuster, it's going to be dir u, and we'll give the website. And we can give it the website, or we can give it the very specific website. I'm going to just give it a 207 and let it search. All right, and then we'll give it a word list. And for this one, I tend to use sec lists. So op sec list, discovery, web, raft, large words, .text, and then I'll put a 150 thread with a timeout of 30 seconds. And right now we just want to look for directories. So there's a bunch of kind of no-name basic directories that don't really exist. We also found server status. We found a backup. That's always fun. And then shop. Shop is the main one that you're going to see. So we can let it run, but we know shop exists. What is backup? So backup has indexing allowed, so we'll be able to see what's in here, and there's a tar file. So I'm going to go ahead and save this link, and I'll put it in HTTP, and I'll make a new one for 207. And we'll go ahead and let it save. Now if I come back here and I go to my folder that it was in, I can see it, but it's only 5. This is a problem that I went through over and over and over again when I was doing this box. I have no idea why, but you can just curl it. So if you come back up here, put this in, and then a.tar.gz, and then we'll say output to a.tar.gz. And now you can see it downloaded quite a bit. And then if I do an lslia, it's at 4.6 megs, and the main site said it was 4.4. So now we got the full data amount. If we say file a.tar, it's going to say it's a tar archive. So we'll go ahead and untar it, so xf, and then give it a.tar.gz. It's going to create a folder on my directory called shop, which makes sense, it's a backup. So we'll go ahead and enumerate this real quick. Now on here it's disallow cache, and then there's sitemap on feeds.xml, feeds/sitemap.xml. Okay, what about admin? Admin's always a fun one. So I like to look at logins a lot. So cat login, just to see how it's doing the process. And this is just part of reading. There's not a lot here. So it's going to require this one file for app header. And then it's going to bring up the template for the store. It's going to redirect. If the redirect is empty, it's going to put something into it. Go through the robots tag. And then it's going to look just to see if there's a user information here. If it is, then you're already logged in. And then there's a comment here. It says commented outline, but it says file put contents. So take the contents of this text file and put it into user and password. So this right here is probably a hard-coded file. So that's never good. Let's see, this should be in the folder that this is in. I'll go ahead and copy this now. So if I am in this folder, I should be looking for that. So if I say cat that file, that doesn't exist. We'll do lslia just to make sure. And it's not in here. This is where it kind of gets a little CTF-y. Well, it's not in the backup. But is it on the main site? So inside the main site, which would be shop, I'm going to put this in here. I'll go ahead and take this off. No, not seeing it there either. So we got to make sure that we get our directories right. So let's go ahead and say shop admin slash. All right, there we go. And then somebody accidentally left hard-coded credentials. So that's an easy grab. So we'll go ahead and keep that in our password files and information. We're not really sure what it's for, but it's a pretty good guess that it's for the shop. Now, if you actually go to shop admin, there's an admin login as well. So we'll go ahead and put these credentials in. Ta-da! It's saying it's not htaccess protected. It's been used in multiple places. Make sure it's not compromised. You can go ahead and enumerate this and look for any kind of modules or those kind of built-in web interfaces, command line bonuses, things like that. Couldn't find anything. But if you go ahead and say LiteCart, what is this? 212. You're going to see there is an arbitrary file upload. And that's on exploit DB, so that's a great place to go. And it's going to take advantage of this PHP, allows remote authenticated attackers. So now we have credentials, so we can get in. We can upload a malicious file and result in remote code execution. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and go to raw. I like raw. Copy all this. Let's start working on this 12256.py. Just make sure. Yep, that is the number of the CVE. Paste it in there, and then we'll save it real quick. Go up to the top. So it doesn't say, it's just using Python for this one. We'll go ahead and give that a try. And I'm going to step you through some of the issues that I run into when I use a lot of these codes, haven't transitioned to Python 3. So I'm going to show you a couple things that I'm going to do on this code that is going to help you out. So let's start with Python for 12256. And it's going to say there's no module named mechanize. And if I say pip install mechanize, it's going to say it's already satisfied because it's sitting in my Python 3 directories. But like every other kind of program I mess with around here, I want to convert it over to Python 3 just so I know it's going to last for me. So we'll go ahead and try this whole thing from the start with Python 3. And right there, you're seeing that we're having print issues. A lot of times you'll have this. This is pretty common. So we'll go ahead and go in and put in our parentheses. So nano 12256, and just look for the prints. And the prints on this one are actually towards the bottom. You're not going to see too much in the code leading up to it. Just put them inside of parentheses. Not a huge deal. All right, close it out and try and run it again. You're gonna get a different problem, which is cookie lib. So I researched this one when Python 3 came about. They got rid of cookie lib, but it is because they use http.cookiejar. So it's just transitioning over. I usually rewrite this whole code and try and do this, but as I was looking through some folks' notes, this was a really cool way to do it, which is just import the new code under the old code's name. It's kind of a lazy patch, but it's going to make it easiest for folks that aren't super familiar with Python to just kind of pump through and get it done. So for this one, we're going to say http.cookiejar. We're going to import that as cookie lib. So it's going to rename it as cookie lib, so everything that references cookie lib will still work. And if you come out here, it's going to run, but it's going to have a different problem. So same kind of thing here. No module named URL lib2. They got rid of URL lib2 and just reverted back to URL lib. So we'll do the same thing here. Import URL lib as URL lib2. It's ugly, but it works. And so now we got to the point where it's saying, give me an H, ask for help. All right, so the code's running to the best of our knowledge. I'm going to show you one other issue that I ran into with this code, just so that you don't run into this problem when you're doing it. All right, so you need to give the login page. So for this one, I gave it T 10.10.10 207 admin. Actually, it's shop admin. And the password, oop, my apologies, I copied code in there. Let's go ahead and clean that up. So we're going to say Python 3 12256 pi. We're going to give it T for target 10.10.10 207 shop/admin, and we're going to give it user admin. And then password, I'll come back over. Pull it from here. And there's our password. Drop it in right there and let it run. Okay, event not found. All right, so we need to put this inside of a set of single quotes just because it's trying to run this as a bash command. All right, and it comes through, and this is the next error that I ran into. And it's really not hard. It's just asking for a full URL. And it's coming down here saying it can't fetch a relative reference. It doesn't know what it's viewing. It's not sure what's happening. And the answer is I didn't give it any kind of protocol. It knows to go to 10.10.10 207, but it doesn't know what. And in this case, you just add the HTTP on the front. Works like a champ. Cool. So now this code is executing. And the way it works is it kind of uploads this information and it gives you a shell. And it should just be a normal command, basic command shell. And then this is the output of that shell. The problem is it's running ID and it's coming back nothing. No matter what you do, it's not going to come back right. And that's just an issue with the way that this site is designed. I'm going to show you a little bit of that. So we will go ahead and clear this, and we'll do nano 12256. So this code is running this command. So on this line, it's going to try and do this, and it's going to request a C. And if it gets C, it's going to try and do system and actually execute it. But it's not working. So what I like to do in this one is I'm going to go ahead and just start changing this code to something a lot more basic. I'm going to run all the way back to here, and then I will say echo hi. So it's going to make a random PHP file. It's going to upload this code. It's going to fake it out because there's a file filter on there. It's going to say it's an XML even though it's a PHP. So we'll close this, save it, run it, and you see that, yeah, it says CID over here because that's the way it's programmed, but it did come back with a hi. And if I open this link, hi. So I'm getting code execution. I'm just not getting code execution, if that makes sense. So we have the ability to write PHP. Let's try another pretty basic one a lot of people use, which is just give me phpinfo Save that. And then we're going to run it. You're going to see a big amount. See? All that information that would have been on phpinfo. It's one of my issues with this code is nobody needs all the content when you're running big files like this. So it's just a flaw in the way that it's written. We'll go ahead and open this though. We got our normal PHP info page. We're going to see that this is for compromised and it's running Apache 2.0. It's got all these files that it's working. And these are all the modules that are loaded. We'll talk about some of that in a minute. The environment is saying it's 207, so it's not sitting inside of a Docker or anything like that. It's sitting inside of this folder, var www html shop, and then the vq mod xml. So that's the file that we're looking at. This is where it's uploading. So just for reference to know where you're sitting at in the file structure, that's really important to get. And if you come down to the core section, it's going to talk about some of the disabled functions. And this one is well locked down. You can't use system, you can't use pass-through, popen, you can't use shell execute, proc open, execute, fsock open, socket create. You're not going to be able to run any kind of socket. You're not going to be able to do any curl. You're not going to be able to do any mail. You can't put any environmental variables. File put contents, fwrite. You're not going to be able to do any of this. That is so frustrating. Even though if you look up here, it says allow URL fopen. It does, but it doesn't. We are almost dead in the water. This one's super frustrating. But we're not done. What can we do? Well, did it give a version? It did. So we are running PHP 7.2.2.4. So let's look for exploit PHP 7.2. CVE details is showing a few. A couple that are higher. But a lot of them are overflows. You got to look at the way that the CVEs are reported using the CVSS. There's different ways that authentication, complexity, access all play into it. These are all remote, so that's handy. Go ahead and go back to Google because it is easier. There's going to be some identified untenable. What are we trying to do though? We want to make sure that we tell it what we want. So we want to bypass disabled functions. How to disable functions in PHP. This one's 7.0 to 7.3 GC disable functions from exploit DB. So we'll go ahead and open that. There's several exploits out there that I found. This one's a great one. This one's the one I ended up using, so I highly recommend this. Obviously it's on exploit DB, so it makes it good, but what it's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to make all these different commands and kind of rebuild what would have been in one of those other functions, and then it's going to get the basic functions, run it all at byte level, and a little bit of unserialization. It's going to fake all of it, and then whatever we want to put, you just put in this one file, which is PAM. So this code should run a uname A. So we'll go ahead and grab the raw and copy it over. I'm going to call this exploit.php because this is where the code is really going to sit. So this one should run uname. But how do I get it up to the system? You can use intercept on Burp Suite is one way to do it. I actually use the same code that I've been using, which is that 12256. Because what it's doing is it's uploading information. We already have a mechanism to upload. It's already told us how. We want it to be a PHP. We just want it to do something different. So if I want to upload PHP information, I can just use a PHP function and give it a shot. So we'll try we'll just run a basic open command because I know it won't let us do fopen, but let's try open. And then we're going to give the full path. So home, parity, HTTP 207, and then exploit.php. It's going to put it up as an application XML. In this case, I'm actually going to stop doing random because I think this is quite easy. I can just call it exploit. I can call it whatever I want. So I'm going to run exploit. I'm going to open this, and that would be great. But I've got double quotes. So I need to change this to single quotes, otherwise I'm going to have a whole mess on my hands. And let's make sure single, double, single. And then I do actually need a set of doubles on the back of this. The single needs to be up here, and the double needs to be there. Okay, there we go. Gotta always make sure you have the right number of quotes. Yes, that's not what I want. The way I've gotten this written is almost like it's running on the server, and that's not the case. It's actually gonna run here on this system. So I need to say open and give it an R, saying that I want it to open it in read mode. And then we can close this out. And I'll actually back up and put all my quotes back in because this is not a string. I don't need double quotes there. I'll just take all this back to the way it should be. Take that out. So now it still says there's something wrong. But if I run this code, I get my ID. So that's the information that I asked for. So exploit PHP is working. We have a code. Let's go ahead and see if we can just tweak this a little bit. And what I want to do is change this to a get. So we'll just say $_get. And then inside here we'll say C. So when you run this code, as long as you put something under C, it should work. Let's try it again. We're going to upload a new version of exploit. And then we'll come over here. Question C equals. This time we'll say hostname. And that seems to be working. Who am I? All right. PWD. All right, so we have a functioning web shell. But because we can't run any of those other functions of execute, shell execute, popen, socket, none of that, we're not going to be able to get a reverse shell. And we're not going to get a much better shell. So this is one of those dilemmas with the way that it's designed. This system is doing most everything right. But we've been able to chain those two. We went ahead and bypassed the disabled functions while we're also doing an arbitrary file upload. So those two chained together were able to get us where we needed to go. I tried to use the Chancro. There's an exploit out there that was used on La Casa de Papel earlier last year. And it works if you have mail function, but like I showed you earlier, that's one of the disabled functions, so it's just not going to work. So I got all the way to the point where I had uploaded that, and I was trying to troubleshoot it only to find out it was never going to work in the first place. So always make sure that you kind of check those functions ahead of time to see what you have, what you don't have. Now we've got the file in. We can kind of look around to find our way out. One of the things I want to show you real quick, And this is going to be the shortcut. If you just want to skip part of the next part of the video, I'm going to show you a really cool shortcut. This is going to be the command shell because it's working. And somebody put me on to what's called, let's go to my opt. And it's called Webwrap. So cd Webwrap. And it's, I installed it already. It's just a little Webwrap thing. I'll show you real quick because they do have a really sweet GitHub, and I'll link it here below. So basically, this guy says, if you give me a web shell, a standard web shell, it impersonates the look and the feel of a shell, even though you're still sitting in a basic web shell. So like this one, I have to tell it every single command, and then it just outputs here. It's kind of ugly. This Webwrap is the next best thing. So and they recommend RL wrap, which allows you to have left, right, up, down functionality, which is great. So RL wrap, let's go back to their GitHub because they kind of have it all right in the beginning. So since it's already installed, we just have to say Webwrap, and this, you can do RL Webwrap and put in Python 3, but because it's installed, I can just do RL wrap with this. And I've got all that saved right here. So Webwrap, put it in here. And then you got to remember to say wrap wherever the injectable portion is. And now I have what looks like a shell. I can ls. You can tell that it's a little bit off with this stuff. It'll still give you all the same outputs. Some of the functions aren't going to work, but you can kind of say which. All this stuff works as if you had a normal shell, but it's not going to work for some of the other functions that we're going to have to do. It's great for the next step, which is enumeration. But I'm going to go ahead and go back, because if I originally did this without Webwrap, I want you to see kind of the stuff that goes into if you don't have Webwrap available, which now you do, but just keep it in mind. So we've got our shell. We can do enumeration through the shell by just poking around folders. I started playing around a lot more with refining my grep and my find skills. So I did find that we are in this directory, and we'll go ahead and do a grep. Now, to grep for something, I usually like to start with passwords. It's an easy one. So we can do grep. I want to go recursive. I want to do case insensitive, and I'm going to say password. Capital, lowercase, mixed case, I don't care. And then with this, you can say the location. Because we're sitting up here, I want to go back. We're in this directory. I want to go back 1, 2, and look at everything in the shop folder. So back 2. And then I always like to say, take all errors and kick them out the dev null. Ugh. And that is what we get back. Super ugly, hard to read. It actually executed some of the code, which is funny. There's another one that pops up somewhere here. But it's not readable. Now I found a way around that. Not a crazy function. I guess I lost it in that window. We'll go ahead and type it up again. So we're going to say grep ri password. And then we're going to say 2 folders back, and then redirect the errors to dev null. Now, I want to take all of that, and I want to drop it into what I'm going to call is grep.out. And it's going to be in the folder that we're currently in. So go ahead and run it, and we don't get any output. That's fine. I will take this, open a new window, new tab, and say give me grep that out. And you actually get it in a semi-formatted form. So if you're ever trying to mess around with something and you have write capability, go ahead and write it to a file and then go back and read that file, because it's just going to come out a lot cleaner than what happens when it kicks out of those stupid PHP basic shells. So for this one, we'll go ahead and take a look at the enumeration. A lot of stuff in the password fields, post password, here's new password, stuff like that. Here's all your files off to the left. There's a login, nothing fancy there. This one just says password. And just kind of work your way through here. There's a lot of information. It's okay to go slow and try and find the little nuts and bolts inside these files. I will go ahead and kind of skip down a little bit further, because what we're looking for, this really struck me. So there's this huge salt, and it's in this file called includes config.inc.php. And then in that same file, 2 lines above, it says the DB password, change this. It's a bad default password, but it's hard-coded into a file. So we want to take a look at config, in the includes folder, config inc.php. So it should just be shop includes config.inc.php. And it's not going to let us see it. If we come back here and we say cat this includes config.inc.php, still not giving us the file, which is kind of funny. But this time I still got it directed to grep out. So that was an accident on my part, but we can go ahead and F5 and the information comes up here. To come here and we just say pwd just to make sure. Okay, everything's working again. I want to see if I can cat this. We're going to try and copy it. So copy includes config php to this folder, and we'll call it config.txt. So if we come back over here and we go to config.txt, now we get the full file. Okay, so that was really frustrating, but we got there. So now we can see the PHP configuration. It's telling you the real path versus relative path. Here's where we're sitting at HTTP. Here's some of the different variables that are going to run. And then here we have code for MySQL, root, with a password of change this. And then that's where that password stalled. That's where it all picked up, was down here, and it missed all this other information. So with that, we've kind of got some of the information that the DB type is MySQL. There's the DB ecom here. Let's see what we can run. So there's a way to do a one-liner. We're going to try it from this command shell over here. And that's just going to be a simple MySQL. User is root. Password equals change this. Was it change this or change me? Change this. And then you can run commands with a tac E. So we'll say E, we're going to say use MySQL show databases. Have to put a semicolon after every single code. We'll run it, and these are the databases: information schema, ecom, MySQL, performance schema, system. So ecom is in there. If you want, you can say use ecom, And then you can say show tables. So those are all the tables that are available. It's a little strange, and there's one for users. So you can just come in here and say select star from LC_users, semicolon. So it does give you a password hash right here for the admin. But we know the admin should be changed this. Or the admin for this is the password that we already found by going in to that file, that log file, and pulling it down, the next gen store. So that's not going to do us any good. Let's see what we can find inside MySQL. So show tables. So these are the different tables that are going to be in there. There is a user, so you can keep going through that same process. So select star from user. And there's MySQL, MySQL, MySQL. So you're only going to get one password hash for root and one for Debian sys maintenance, and we already know the one for root because that's how we also got in, which is change this. So none of those are going to really get us anywhere, but there's kind of an interesting table on here called func that I want to look at. So let's select star from func, and I'm going to actually take show tables off because it's just distracting. We know we want to look at this. So it kind of says a couple things in here. These are headers: name, return, DL type, execute command, 0 libmysql.so function. So it's just kind of giving you information. Same thing as before. If you export that to a file, it's going to list it a little bit prettier. It should. So like if we go .sql.out and run that, you come over here and you just say I want to look at sql.out. Now it's gonna kind of lines up a little bit better, but this is a command that is available to us. So we don't have the other commands. We don't have the execute, but we can try and use this one. So you want to select the function. So select execute cmd. You're going to put it inside of those brackets, and it should be inside of doubles. So here we can say ID. Take the SQL out just so it prints here again. And it got kicked back. Doesn't want to give me information there. And if we give like, okay, tell me the print working directory, it's not going to give me that information. So there is some frustration with this because of the limitations. None of this is actually looks like it's working. If I kick it to the output, I'm actually getting things to process. It found this stuff. It processed it, but the way that MySQL is running, it puts in a bunch of empty bytes when it's doing different things. So it's super annoying. If I come over here and I go back and I say ID, and I run that and I come back over here and I refresh this, we do see that it kicks us out as a different user. So that's handy, and maybe that's the next step out, but we can't get a reverse shell. We can't seem to get this code to execute exactly what we want. I can't get it to list in a viewable format, because even when it kicks it out as this plus a bunch of bits. If I say, go ahead and ls your home directory, it's going to give me just the first line in the header. So this is the first line, autoconf. So this was, again, one of those CTFE areas. One of the things that you can do is just say, take a shot in the dark, honestly. I want you to list an SSH folder. And when you come over here, there is a folder and it does have authorized keys in it. I didn't appreciate that. Now, if you come over here and you run the RL wrap, you can run that same command from here. So we'll run this whole thing to here. And when you paste it into here, you see the same thing, but you can see it's saying other things, like using a password on command line can be insecure. This is what we're going to execute, and this is what you get back. So it's not any different, but it's just better confirmation from in there. But that's why outputting it to a file is so important if you don't have the capability of the web wrap. So we do have unauthorized keys. So my next step would always be, hey, we're going to drop our key into the authorized keys. You're going to love this one. So I'm going to open a new thing, and I'll just say cat my SSH ID RSA.pub, and that is going to be my key. So if I drop this in, I should be able to go to that computer without a password. Now, I told you I was going to show you how to do it from this window, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to say echo. We're going to echo this whole line, and we're going to copy into ./.ssh authorized underscore keys. Close it out. Let's see what comes back. Come back over and refresh the screen. It does see that it got our key and it processed it. Now if I bring up the key, just want to show you something. When it gets to P80, it goes directly to IXZ. In between there is a plus. Now, continuing down at the, what is that, the 7.3 up? CM, so it kind of stops there and you don't see anything after that. But what's actually happening on the back end, and I was able to verify this when I had the root, it processes it like a URL, so it treats it like a space. So really, if you were to look at this file, there's going to be a bunch of spaces in my key because it doesn't know how to process a URL properly. So this is one of those steps where you can benefit from having some burp suite, but I tried to do URL encoding and it got all mad at me. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning and I'm going to use the upload function. And I'll show you how we do that. Go ahead and close that out. We're going to nano this file, come down, and where it wants to upload, I'm just going to change this to ssh.txt, and then I'm going to have it open my .ssh id rsa.pub. And it's going to read it into ssh.txt on the file system. I'm going to call this v3 just so we don't lose our progress so far. When I run this, I'm going to go over here and say v3. Again, says something's wrong. If I come up here and I say, give me my ssh.txt, it's here. And all the pluses are retained because I uploaded it as a text file and it didn't treat it like a URL. So as you go through, there's all these plus symbols. They're all there. All right, so I've got a file in the file structure. I want to get that information in. Simple enough. You can try and copy, you can try and cat, you can do all these other things. I found copy to be, frankly, the easiest. I know it's not the best if you're working with other people on these networks. I got a fresh box. I'm not really messing around with anybody. I'm going to close it out or revert it before I leave. I am sitting on VIP boxes, though, so it's a little bit different. Be a little bit more cautious when you're sitting on those free boxes on the bigger networks. So with this one, we can go back to this browser that we've got. And we're sitting in the MySQL. We're going to use this. We're going to select a command. And I just want to say copy. And I'm going to copy. It's actually going to be var before that, right? It's supposed to be over here. Var www HTML, and then I'll paste in the rest of that line, ssh.txt. The reason we have to do the full path is because the code is actually running as MySQL, so you're in a different directory. It's not going to work, so you need to reference everything with actual directories. So we're going to say copy this, get rid of all of this. Hate to run over. Come on. This is dumb. There we go. So we're going to copy it into SSH keys. Go ahead and run that. If I come back over here, it's just going to give just a basic, yeah, I copied this into that. It has no output, so there's nothing to look at. But if we come back over here and we say SSH, that was MySQL, so MySQL at 10.10.10.207. And then we say I want to use my key. We're in the box. We are MySQL. All right, so we went from nothing to, I didn't even show you, but it was www data. Www data, we've pivoted into MySQL. Is that going to be enough? Is there a USER.TXT here? There's not. We do have better access to the system and we can mess around. So again, I'll go back and run the same kind of information that I like to run before, which is grep. So in this folder, I will grep recursively with case insensitivity for password. And it shouldn't be too bad in this folder. So these are all binary files that do have passwords in them. And then here we have a couple different things here. We have change me, change this, and we have this password right here. That looks like an actual password. These other ones, change me, I don't think that works, but change this does, because that's how we got into MySQL. So there's a little bit of password reuse and log at the same time. They were all put in for root, so you can't really tell too much from this strace data. But if you keep going down using a password, and then there's PAM, there's a PAM error. and it's sudo password for sysadmin. All right, make sure to copy that real quick, and then I want to cat the Etsy password again, because now we can kind of take a better look at what we're going up against. So root, keep coming down. We were www data, and then we kind of like to settle down here at the bottom. So there's one called red, home red. There's one called MySQL, and then the 1000 user is called sysadmin. These both have logins. This one does not, so it looks like this one is not expected to log in, but these two are. So it makes logical sense. The next place we should go is sysadmin, and we found a password in a file, so let's go ahead and give that a try. Sysadmin, here's the password, and we're sysadmin. Awesome. So we'll go to that directory, do an ls, and there is the user file. So cat user.txt, boom, got user. So it took us almost an hour, right around an hour to get there. I appreciate you sticking with me, but we're not even close to being done yet. This box was a hard box for a reason. The next one I actually needed a little bit of help with. I don't think I could have done it on my own. Don't let me confuse you. I didn't get a lot of help, but what I did get was I'm looking for a file and it's hidden. So this is where I say we tried a little bit of grep. I want to try a little bit of find here, because we want to try and find these files, but I don't have a lot of information to go off of. So with this one, we'll do a find. I don't want to find all the way at the beginning because I don't know where I'm looking. I'm going to say name. And I did get tipped off that it was a hidden file, so it's a dot something. So if you were going to use grep, it's a little bit different because you got to define and do a slash dot to escape and all this other stuff. But find name, we'll just process it like this. I do know it's a file, so I want to say type F. And then when I get it, I want it to execute a list, LIT. And you close it out by putting these codes in, and like normal, I want to kick everything that I can't see out to dev null. I don't want to see it. Go. Tons of files. I just wanted to show that just so you get an opportunity to see there's a lot here. That's not fully helping us get to where we need to go. So we got to play around with a couple other features. One of the ones I played with was mtime, which was when it was last modified. So the way it works is based on days. This box was released 4 months ago or so. So I kind of look at 120 days. It was probably prepped before that. So I'm going to say 120 days. That's a lot of January stuff. It was 4 months, probably prepped it before that. Let's try 200. I know this is super not helpful if you don't know what's going on. Okay. There's a lot of files, but based on this number right here, I wonder about this file right here. So this one's a .pam Unix SO. There's a lot of other sys files in here, sys module. I think I already got rid of the proc files. There's some user, some snap. I hate to say it's this one, but it is. It's a large file sitting here at the bottom, and it was messed with in August. A lot of these other files were January or May. But I want to take a little bit closer look at this because I'm not really sure what I'm looking at. So we'll go to this folder, and then I'll have it do an LSLIA. So PAM is the authentication for passwords. Come in here, a lot of the stuff, okay, you've got February of 19, November of 17, February 20, and then you've got these 2 files from August 31st. So it's been said, you know, if you look at the graphic, it says the spy who hacked into machine. So it's talking about basically incident response. So these are the kind of things you look at when you're doing incident responses, timestamps, things that look a little weird. It's a little strange that you've got a hidden file next to a regular file with the same size, with the same date, but it's very different than all these other dates. So there's something potentially changed. And I thought this was kind of a cool story to look into. So PAM_Unix.so exploit. There's some that say compromised system. I mean, it's kind of been going on for a little while. There's one here from 2020. Let's see what this one kind of links into all these. A little bit different than what I was looking for. So the story that came with this one was a rootkit. Let's see if I can find it. Nmap. So back in September of 19, there's this rootkit coming out from miners, and there's a lot of information on a PAM Unix security bypass that came along with it. Trend Micro talks a little bit about it. Hopefully they kind of access the preload and just mess with the core information that was being put together, and they kind of built a backdoor into it. And they show the whole process of them going through, chmoding, curling it down, and setting it up. Some of these they wrote in SSH keys, but they had refined it a little bit and put in directly into the code of the PAM modules. So I'd like to see, there was one from MITRE. Modifying the authentication process, the pluggable authentication module. So this is where they talked about Nmap as well, but they said this is the common authentication module, and they're seeing that some adversaries were creating backdoors in this file and putting in adversary supplied values as legitimate. Down here there's a couple references. I want to go through 2 of them. So Zephrax kind of put the code out there. This is how you would put a backdoor in. And then out of the kindness of his heart, there's another one for a backdoor.patch. But he kind of just discussed, you know, take all this information and it's going to generate it into the module. Yeah. So it just kind of gets built into the system, and then he has it patch it as well. The second one was a better explanation where they talked about a variant where you could exfil credentials through DNS requests by collecting them, modifying that PAM, and then collecting them and sending them along. But essentially, he started talking about, okay, there's a backdoor. Here's all the DNS stuff. A lot of DNS stuff. Jeepers, all the way down here. He's really not talking about it at all, but this one, they went through, they built a backdoor, but then they built a backdoor with access out. So one of the things I went after this one, when I'm not sure what's going on, it's an executable. I'm going to say file PAM Unix. Oops. So we're going to see that it is an ELF 64. Here's the build. Debug info not stripped. So it's debuggable. But let's get the strings on it. So if we do a strings PAM Unix SO, got all these cool strings that you can go through and look for information. The one I wanted to look for here was grep the word backdoor, and it's in there. If you do a capital C and any number, it'll give you context before and after. So there's not a lot of context in this one. You see backdoor and you see a lot of other information. So we're going to need to take a deeper look at the actual file. To do that, we're going to need to get it off our system and then put it into something. So you can try and use IDOPRO for some of this, but it doesn't really reverse the code the way that Ghidra does. So let's see what we can do. For this system, sysadmin, let's see if we can go, so let's do a touch var www html, was it shop vq mod xml hi. So we do not have permission to write in that folder, but we got the next best thing. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to jump in and be 100% honest with you. I had some kind of catastrophic failure with my video recording when I was doing this. So I'm coming back towards the end. As I am editing the video, I realized this. So I'm going to put all this together right now. It's going to look a little weird, but that's okay, because we're at a perfect kind of jumping off point, because we're going to go back in and we're going to pull down some information via SCP, and then we'll go ahead and do what we need to do with Ghidra, wrap it all up, and then we'll be able to get back in. But because we already have the credentials for sysadmin and we can SSH in, it should be nice and clean. So let me try this where we're at now. I'll start by jumping back into my SSH. So SSH into sysadmin at 10.10.10.207. And I have the password right here saved in a different file. So we're back into the box, no problem. But we're also going to open up a new window. Go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. We're going to do SCP, so secure copy. It uses SSH. So the only connectivity we have is either SSH or 80. I wasn't able to do any offload through 80 because of the differences in users. I know I did it the first time, can't figure it out. But the easy way is just go SCP. So we'll do SCP, and it's going to be the same information, sysadmin at 10.10.10.207. And then we're going to tell it the file that we're looking for. I'm just going to go straight to the source, which was in that lib folder, x86_64-linux-new. It's in the security folder, and it was called PAM _unix.so. And then on my computer, I'm sitting in my home directory again, so I'll just go HTB 207 and then copy it right back in there, right on top of PAM unix.so. We will put the password information back in, and you see we copied it. So that was right where we were at. We'll just pick up with that. We're going to see what we can find out. And the best way to do it is through using Ghidra. So Ghidra is already installed on my computer. It is sitting in my downloads directory right now. I don't usually do that, but it's sitting in there. So cd Ghidra, and we'll keep going in. I unpacked it into another folder for no reason. And then use Ghidra run. Ghidra run. If you have any issues with Java, your Java developer kit, whatever, you can go in there. I've already got it loaded in here from when I did the first demo. So I'll just bring it up and show you what I was able to do. And it's going to do the same thing it always does. It's going to say, it has not been analyzed. Do you want to analyze it? So we can say sure. It's going to do a bunch of weird analysis. And it's going to decompile it, look for different strings, look for different things, which is going to work out well for us, because I want to go direct to tell me about this backdoor. All right, so I don't think it's in comments. I think it was a function, so we're going to just go ahead and say all fields. Just show me anything that says backdoor, because you shouldn't have anything in here that says backdoor. All right, there's backdoor, and it's sitting here in this stack. We'll go ahead and say next, because this is where it gets interesting. There's a flag backdoor, and this is down in that authentication process. It's going to read in a password, and then it's going to say if this var2 equals 0, backdoor, compare the string backdoor to p. If it is, go ahead and drop it into ivar2. What the answer is. If it's not 0, go ahead and go through the process of verifying password. All this to be said, there's two variables sitting right here. Okay, they're keywords and they're pointers to these hex values. So I'm going to go ahead and take these hex values and see what we can do with them. That is the extent of Ghidra that we're going to use, just to let you know. Like it wasn't too bad. Oh, I don't want burp. So I'm going to use CyberChef just because I like it. And you could do all this through different mechanisms, but it's always a nice little tool to play around with. If you don't like using it on the GCHQ site, I completely get that. Go ahead and you can download it and run it off your own system. No big deal. Right now, for ease, I'm just going to drop it in here. We're going to say this is from hex, and it comes back with characters, so that's cool. And we will copy this over. So we've got two sets of hex. And hey, maybe that's a password, right? It's going to be probably a root password. So let's see if we can sue root. That password does not work. But it's not wrong. One of the problems you have with this is because everything's done at a byte level in this. Earlier in the program, I'm not exactly sure where it was now, but earlier in the program it mentions Endian-ness of what's in here. And so it just brings up another point to go ahead and check that. So CyberChef has that option where you can swap Endian-ness. I don't want to pad incomplete words, and I'm actually going to swap these. It is in hex and this, but then I'm going to process it again from hex. So if I don't do this, if I don't do this, it hates me. But essentially, this is in an order based on the number of word length bytes, because it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, flip, 1, 2, 3, 4, flip. So this could be a password. This could be a password. These could all be passwords based on, it's similar to a ROOT.TXT, a rotation cipher. It's similar in the aspect that it's going to change based on this number. Now, you can play around with a bunch. For me, I took it at face value, 0 to 8, and then this is 8, value of 7. So this is 8 bytes, and this is starting at 8, a value of 7 bytes. So I just said, hey, the words are 8 bytes. Didn't want to get too complicated, so using a word length of 8 bytes, we get this as a password. And if we come back in here and we say sue root, that is the password. ID I am root. So from there you can just go cd root, and then ls, we're going to see that root.txt, cat root.txt, and we're done. Didn't miss a whole lot, but I really wanted to come back in and show you the Ghidra part, flip it around. Totally hard box. I appreciate that anybody that stuck around this long. There's a lot going on in this box, but if you tried this box and you couldn't defeat it, that's okay. This one was meant to be what I would actually start putting up there is it's similar to an OSCP box. Not necessarily some of the techniques, yeah, but just the try harder mentality. Like, this box really made you go, well, none of my techniques are working. I can't get my reverse shell. I can't get these executables running through PHP. I can't do any of this stuff. So what can I do, and how can I take that extra step to get there? So really, really tricky. And you got those steps by using that authenticated arbitrary file upload, CVE, and then using the PHP disabled function bypass in order to get some code execution. Look for passwords. Pretty basic technique, but we don't use it a lot because normally I would have used linps or something else. I couldn't get it in the system at that time. I wasn't putting it on the system at that time, so I had to use functions that were inside of all these enumeration tools and enumerate manually. So find those passwords, password reuse in the logs, you had to inject your SSH keys through MySQL, through these web shells, like 4 chains in a row to get it to work. But once you did, getting into sysadmin, and understanding how to look at incident response, understanding, that it's not perfect. That would have taken a lot longer to do enumeration, but when it was all said and done, we found the file. We took a quick look at it, strings, brought it back to our box, took a deeper look at it with Ghidra. Super simple. That was not reverse engineering. Do not confuse that. That was super basic. But once we got that information, playing around with that little bit of hex information was enough to get us the root password to bypass and get into the box and finish it. So this box, Dan Chen, you beat me. Dan Chen, I really appreciate what you did. It was fun and hard at the same time. For everybody else, please stick around, subscribe. I really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Give me comments. I love when people say what you like, what you don't like. Let me know, and I'll make every effort to make some improvements along the way. But continue watching here, and you can find me over on Discord a lot, and I'll help you out. I am working on Dante still. It's been a couple months, but it's not due to difficulty. It's due to my time and things that I've got going on. So I highly recommend that. I help people out on there all the time on Dante because it's a lot of fun to me. If you're trying to go towards that OSCP route, it's great practice. Other than that, I got GPen coming up, and I hope to share some of those techniques with you as we keep going along. For now, have a great week. I hope to see you again next week.